Hello, 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 good morning. So we're on to day 3 of circle skills, which means we're just exploring some of those basic principles and concepts and I guess skills that you can bring through in order to hold powerful and transformative circles. So for those that don't know me or are just joining, my name is Mitle Savvy and I am a circle holder, and I really am on a mission to help as many women as possible experience the transformative power of circles, and a big part of that is mentoring and training women as circle holders. Welcome Jeanette, hello beautiful. And so today what I want to dive into is how we create a safe space, which is a really important part of holding circles. So in the first day we looked at you as circle holder, the magic and medicine that you're bringing through for the people that you're here to serve. And yesterday we looked at your intention and the meaningful purpose of your circles. So we're starting to create both a safe and a sacred container through which you're going to share whatever it is that you wish to share in that circle space, honouring the symbolism of the circle, honouring the sacred art and tradition of circles, but also redefining them for the purpose that you have, using what is there in a way that is creative, innovative, and really works for you and your community or your colleagues or your students, whoever it is that you are gathering together. So before we begin, as always, we just drop into the space together. So I invite you, if you're able to, just to gently close down your eyes or gently lower your gaze. And we just take a few moments to step over the threshold into this moment of time and space. Today we're going to start with a gentle body scan, just being exactly where you are, not trying to change anything, starting with the tips of your toes, the soles of your feet, just allowing your awareness, your attention to travel up your body, going up your legs, across the top of your feet, your heels, your ankles, coming up your shins, your calves, just connecting to each part of the physical body. And as you do so, noticing any areas perhaps of tension or pain or discomfort. You may wish to rest your attention there for a few moments, not trying to change it or shift it, just being present with what is there and listening to any message or insight that may be presented. Coming up into your knees, your kneecaps, the backs of your knees, into your thighs, the backs of your thighs, the top of your thighs, to your groin, your pelvis, your buttocks. Checking in with your breath every now and again, breathing in and out with the natural rhythm of your breath. And starting to travel up your torso, internally and externally, coming up through your organs, up your spine, your belly, traveling up your back, up to your heart space, your chest, into your shoulder blades, up into your shoulders, along your collarbones, gently traveling down from your shoulders, your arms, your elbows, all the way down to your wrists, palms of your hands, the backs of your hands, the tips of your fingers, and traveling back up along your fingers, your hands, your wrists, into your elbows, your shoulders, coming back to the tops of your shoulders, to your throat, your neck, coming up the back of your head, your jaw, your mouth, your lips, your tongue, your nose, your cheeks, your eyes, your forehead, traveling all the way to the very crown of your head. Just taking a few moments here. Now we're going to take 3 cleansing breaths together. So breathing in through your nose, letting it out with a gentle sigh. Breathing in through your nose and out with an audible sigh. Breathing in through your nose and letting it out with a louder sigh. And now allowing your breathing to find its natural rhythm. Just gently drawing your awareness to any part of the body where you can feel yourself holding tension. Perhaps you just wish to drop your shoulders a little bit lower. Release any tension in your jaw. Just taking a few moments to breathe in and out, being as present with what is as you can. Now we come into our heart space to the very center of our chest. You may wish to place your hand there or 2 fingers just to plug in to the wisdom of your heart, signaling to your physiology that you are present, safe, and listening. And from this space we set an intention to create a safe and sacred container between us, trusting that all that comes through will serve us and the greater whole. Taking a deep breath in and letting it out. Just gently wiggling your toes, rubbing your hands together, and when you're ready, blinking open your eyes. Welcome, beautiful women. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're able to join me in that body scan, fabulous. If you've just popped on, welcome, and please say hello in the comments so that I know you're here. So today we're talking around creating a safe space within our circles, and if you missed the introduction, just pop back on the replay. So my first question is always, what does that mean to you? What is a safe space for you? Because this will really help you create that safe container for others. It's really important for us to understand what we mean by a safe space. So this will depend on all those things we've already talked about on the first day in terms of you as a circle holder, your quirks and gifts, your life experience, your work experience, your lived experience, etc. So just taking a few moments, you can do it now or continue in your journal. What does that look like to you? So think about other circles you may have attended. Think about other gatherings you may have attended. Think about sessions with counselors or therapists, and start to unpack, start to pull at those threads and really tune into where you felt safe. Where did you feel safe to share, to be vulnerable, to be willing to be fully present, to not distract yourself, to not avoid what was going on? Where did you feel safe to give an opinion or express a reflection without fear that there would be some form of recrimination or judgment or criticism? And then have a look about, or have a think about places where you haven't felt safe, or places perhaps where you have been criticized or undermined or shamed or judged for what you've said or what you've done. And as you do that, just start to think how that affects you. So how emotionally that felt for you, how physically that felt for you, how mentally that felt for you. What was the difference? And we start to piece together those bits where you feel safe. So it's very likely that in circumstances, in situations, in gatherings, in circles where you feel safe, that is the container that you're going to wish to create for others. And once we've done that, we just want to go to what is deeper than that, and start to look at the practical ways that we can make a space safe, the energetic ways we can make a space safe. And I've started saying, when we're talking about safe space, that perhaps a more accurate way of looking at it is to create a safer space. I'm not sure that we can ever create a 100% safe space for everyone. So that brings our awareness to doing the best we possibly can and continuing to learn and deepen our capacity to create that safe space, but also maintain that safe space if things arise during that. So from that physical perspective, thinking about if you're holding your in-person circles, what is the physical space like? What can you do within that space to help women feel comfortable, to help them trust the process, to help them trust you, to show them that they have just entered a safe and sacred space. And if you're holding your circles online, this is perhaps even more relevant in some ways. It's not more important, but there's a different twist when you're holding your circles online, because when you have an in-person space, the women are present, and I guess they could just walk out, but you can address that in your guidelines, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. But when you're in the online space, it is much easier for someone to absent themselves from the circle. There may be real technical reasons that they drop out, but also they can choose just to leave. And I've spoken to many circle holders that has happened for. So really starting to think how you can maintain that integrity, whether it's in person or online. And that's where we're going to come to our guidelines. But apart from the physical space, it's also that energetic space. Remembering we talked about your intention and the meaningful purpose. So when you're creating a safe and sacred space, really embracing that energetic container as well. So your intention around creating that space, how will you energetically maintain that space? What is it that you can draw in and call on? So we're going to talk about opening space, but your invocation, whoever you're calling in to guide you through that space, that'll all help maintain the integrity energetically and physically of the space that you've created. Okay, hello beautiful Amy, welcome my love. So moving on then to your guidelines, and this is, for me, this is like the secret sauce of creating safe space. So once you've thought about what a safe space is for you, your experiences of that, and starting to really unpack, pull on those threads to get really crystal clear on what safety means for you, we start to look at writing your guidelines, because your guidelines are the basis, they're the foundation for this container in which you're holding these women or these people, and you're taking them on a journey from when they enter that space to when they leave that space. So this is the foundation of your container. Don't miss your guidelines. They are essential, they are integral, they are so important. I can't overemphasize this enough. The difference between an incredibly powerful and transformative circle will often come down to the incredible guidelines that are shared or the absence thereof. So don't skip this. Some people feel uncomfortable sharing the guidelines, but you're doing this in order to maintain the integrity of that space. So don't be put off. Your role as holding that space, that is your responsibility to create these guidelines. And we can dive more into co-creating the guidelines with your circle. So if you have a closed circle, then this may be something you do together in your first circle. If you're going over 8 weeks, that very first circle, you may write those guidelines together to agree the container with which you've all stepped into. But if you're holding what I call an open circle, so it's a one-off circle, you're calling in a group of women who may never have sat in circle together, then this is for you to create these and share them with an explanation, with understanding, with compassion, and perhaps share why you've written them, why they're there. The guidelines help to really manage expectations in many ways. It allows the women to feel safe because they understand what is expected of them and expected of each other. So we'll touch on what you can include in those, but as an example, confidentiality. That needs to be clear. It cannot be assumed. And your definition of confidentiality and my definition of confidentiality may be very different. So as you're explaining that, everything that is shared here is held in confidence, you may wish to expand on what that means so that we all are crystal clear on confidentiality. So it may be not just not repeating anything that was shared here, but also not speaking about anybody who's not in that circle. It may be not, so you're not speaking about people who are not in the circle, but also after that circle, how far does that guideline of confidentiality travel? Like how far does that expand to? And just remembering in our beautiful age of social media and sharing selfies, etc., that this is something I'm exploring even further. Getting consent in terms of photographs or saying you were in circle and these are the women I was in circle with is going to become more and more important, because for some women that won't be safe. They don't want their photograph on social media. So starting to think of all those different threads. So your guidelines are both for your circle, but you also have obligations as a circle holder to think through all of those end points. I hope that makes sense. If you're here and joining me live, please do ask questions, because I'm trying to cover a lot in a sort of summary form. And then the guidelines are also, they are your absolute support if something arises in circle. One of the questions I get asked the most, one of the biggest fears, I guess, that women have around holding circles is what happens if something goes wrong? What happens in a challenging situation? What happens if somebody, breaches any of those guidelines? And this is where your guidelines come into their own, because you have created that container. You can draw on them to gently pull someone back into line with those guidelines. You can use them to remind people what their responsibilities are within the circle. So, for example, in my guidelines, I talk about women using their own discernment in terms of what they share, taking self-responsibility for the energy that they bring to the space, and really reminding women we're there to be seen and heard and witnessed, and not to give advice or judgment or platitudes or sympathy. And you may wish to expand on any of those depending on who you're serving and their understanding of those terms. So by this I mean, for example, in my guidelines for my in-person open circles, I actually talk a lot about allowing women to cry. So if women come to that space and they're safe and they feel they're able to release and cry, it's very important that you have created a safe container for them to do that by explaining what happens in that situation, because a lot of women will have a natural instinct which kind of overrides them to rush over, to do all the things we're trying to avoid: sympathy, platitudes, pats on the head, there, dear, everything will be okay. So some of these concepts, as you deepen into thinking about them, you'll start to see how important this is. We must never make assumptions about anybody knowing what they can do in your circle. That is your responsibility to explain that. And as I said, if you're holding a closed circle and you're taking the same group of women on a journey over a period of time, I highly recommend doing that as a co-created process when you first gather, before you do anything else, opening the space and then deciding what are those guidelines, what is that container, what are the expectations here, because that gives you a real sense of ownership and contribution to creating that safe space. Hello, beautiful women who've just joined. Thank you, Amy. Yes, the guidelines are the container. Yes, absolutely. And they can be very, very short. They can be more lengthy. It will depend, when we come back, to your intention and your meaningful purpose and who you're holding space for. What else did I want to talk about? The other thing I wanted to mention about the guidelines is that they will be a living, I was going to say a living document. They probably won't be a document, although you might want to write them up and read them out. But they will be an evolving part of your circles. My guidelines have actually got longer for my in-person circles and shorter for my online membership. So because the women have been in there for longer and we understand what's expected of us, but when new people join, then I tend to share longer guidelines once again in each circle. But just know that they will change and evolve with you as you deepen your capacity as a circle holder, as you have more experience of holding circles, then that will be reflected in your guidelines. You may get more confident in navigating challenging situations, and therefore you'll need to have less detail in your guidelines, because you'll know what you're going to do and you'll be have that confidence to navigate that. But at the beginning, I suggest having quite detailed guidelines that give you, it's the container for the women in circle, but it's also your framework, your scaffolding to lean into, to lean back on. So the next part, we've got two more parts of this today. The next part is, who are your circles for in terms of creating a safe space? This is really, really important, because we can make a lot of assumptions around who we think our circles are safe for, but maybe they're not. So looking at your community, how inclusive your community is there anything overtly which, if there's a bias or a prejudice, that may be coming through in how you're sharing your circles, who you're speaking to directly. Who's in your community? Where you might feel safe, if you look around, you may see a very white space, for example. So although you think it would be a safe space for Black, Indigenous and women of colour, perhaps it's not, because your representation and your experience of that simply isn't there. So I actively encourage you to explore inclusivity, and particularly to engage with women who are coaching in this area, to look at any internal bias, any internal prejudice that you may have that you may not be aware of, and to really start to uncover who you wish to serve and the type of circle holder that you wish to be. Inclusivity is active and it's an ongoing journey of unpacking privilege and bias and prejudice and things that we have internalized that we may not even be conscious of when we're talking to the women we're wishing to draw in. So I'm going to share some resources in the comments as well for women that I'm working with, and I'm working on this very actively at the moment in my spaces. So Sharyn, Holmes and Cruz, Pena are two women that I'm working with, and I'll pop those links up there for you to connect with them, to learn from them, to speak to them. But I really encourage you to think about those things in terms of the safety of your spaces. What is a safe space for you? What does that involve, and how can you create that? How can you draw on both the physical and energetic spaces that you have in order to maintain the integrity of them? Writing your guidelines and getting really clear on what they will contain so that you can not only manage everyone's expectations, but create that safe container that has a really solid foundation. Who are your spaces for? And really expanding that out to see who's in your community and who do you want to serve and how can you address inclusivity. And then reaching out for support from those who are teaching on inclusivity and being willing to deepen into that unpacking process. So I hope that that is helpful. In Circle School, we write your guidelines as part of that, so we get a chance to explore this in more detail. But if you have any questions about what you would like to include in there, or if anything is unclear, please pop your comments in and tag me, and I will come back and answer them. And if you're stepping onto this path, the Holding Space Immersion, the next live round starts on the 9th of September. That's just $97. It's a 14-day immersion. The content's there. You can dive in straight away and then join the next live round. And Circle School starts again on September the 30th, and the Holding Space Immersion is included in that. So if you have any questions about Circle School, please let me know. I would love to welcome you in, because it is not just a 9-week course, it's also an incredible community. And you get lifelong access to the community and all of those benefits of being part of a community of women on the same path, together with various opportunities, a directory. What else is in there now? Incredible guest mentors ongoing. So even once the course is finished, there's lots of wonderful events happening in there. A chance to be promoted by me, just sharing on my page when you've got your circles coming up, and we've got a few more things happening, including circle sessions. So yeah, it's a really juicy place. So thank you so much for joining me. If you have any questions, let me know. And I'm traveling now for the rest of today, but I will hopefully be back the same time tomorrow, back in London, leaving behind sunny Sicily and heading back to London to finally pick up our van, which has been serviced, and hitting the road and heading to Scotland. So if you're coming with me on this 10-day journey, I could be in a different country each day. So I will see you all tomorrow. Hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Mwah. Bye for now.